Hello, my name is Sally Pinto, and I'm the program director for the Yonkers NORC, Neighborhood Naturally Occurring Retirement Community. We serve seniors 60 plus in Northeast Yonkers. We are under the auspices of WJCS and the Yonkers Office for the Aging. We also have a resource specialist and a nurse on staff. We conduct virtual programming in partnership with the Yonkers Public Library on a daily basis. Enjoy the program.
Z for that wonderful introduction. Yeah, I love doing these workshops via Zoom or in person. Today's the first time I combined them on the same day, so that's kind of exciting. This is what we worked on in person. This is the little demo prototype that I created, and it's on canvas with acrylic paint. We can work at home. I believe you have 9 by 12 paper, 11 by 8.5 by 11 computer paper is fine. Smaller drawing paper, larger drawing paper, it would take you longer. But for our purposes, we're going to use 9 by 12 drawing paper. It's like, multi-medium, and oil pastels, which, I have my tin of oil pastels here. You can use basic 6 color. In the example, I think I have 5 or 6 colors at the most. So you can use more, you can use less. I'm also, for the purposes of this demo, you can use watercolor, colored pencil, marker. If you have a black Sharpie or a black permanent marker, that's helpful too when we do the lines, and I'll show you that in a minute. You can use multimedia. We have done multimedia here with oil pastel and watercolor. The possibilities are not endless, but they're, not just 1 or 2 things. You can, have fun with this and be creative. So let me talk a little bit about the artist who inspired. Can I share screen? I can do that, right? Z?
Yeah, I'm going to make you co-host and then you can do that. That's awesome. Okay. So here we go. You can share your screen now.
Okay. Okay, so wait, let me. Okay, so this piece in particular, called 3 Soul Visitors, is by the artist who inspired the work that we're going to sort of base our oil pastel drawing on today. His name is Cyrils, as Z noted earlier. And he was born in 1937, and he started in Philadelphia. And, he started painting and his studio art as most artists do, doing conventional, traditional still life and figure painting and portraiture, very classic, looked like what it was supposed to be, shading, all that sort of thing. And then in the very early 70s, he was one of the first African-American artists to go to Africa. He went to Ghana, to Nigeria, and to Morocco. And he was so inspired by the clothing and the music and the patterns and the culture and the rhythm. And as you can see, I feel that it's evident in this piece. This is just what's the word I'm looking for? One of many, maybe a simpler one where he really uses that. There are some huge paintings where he does this kind of, you can see dance is reflected in his work. I don't know if you can see my cursor. He was a drummer too, so percussion. This is emblematic of a drum, is kind of evident in his work. So the reason why I kind of gravitated towards this is because it's so different from what I do, and it's so fun, and I feel like there's less pressure because there's no need to make it look like something like a landscape or a portrait. And because it embodies all those things that I talked about, the culture, the pattern, the rhythm, the people, there's a lot of that in there. So let me stop sharing and talk about. Oh, this is what, I'm sorry, give me a second, because I use Google Meet at school and not Zoom. So I'm a little, can you make me not host so that I can get back to you guys? Because for some reason I can't see you now. Oh, I'll stop share. Okay, got it. All right, can you all see me?
Yes.
Okay, so we're doing the acrylic painting version as an oil pastel. And I started that here, and I'm going to continue this because this may very well, because this is very zen when you're working on this, take more than an hour. But I want to show you how I got to this point. And then I'm going to show you here, and then I'll continue working on this version, which is oil pastel and color pencil, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So it's basically a simplified, very simplified version of the 3 soul visitors that I just showed you. And you have an option here. Let me move this closer so you can see this.
So Teresa, we just
Yes.
have, just to clarify, we have questions in the chat and someone private chatted me. So the paper is better to be horizontal because that's the way the work was, or they
That's
could-
also up to you.
Okay.
This is pretty loose. It's flexible. If you want to do it vertically, you can. I mean, the only reason this is a horizontal layout is because, again, it's a drum. But, you know, it may work well for some people this way too, you know, and you can turn your drum this way. I incorporate the drum because he was a drummer. He passed away in 2004. He was a drummer, and it's an abstract way to show the rhythm, you know, and pattern, because the drumming has a pattern, the beat has a pattern, but that's up to you. And I feel like the little circles have that beat kind of feel to it. So how do we do this? You can go ahead and use a pencil and sketch this in. I often start my paintings or whatever with pencil, but because I'm kind of letting myself, I'm giving myself the freedom to be loose here, I'm going to do it right with a marker. And if that's, you know, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, use a pencil, sketch it in, and then draw it over with marker. When you draw directly with marker, and even with pencil, but because you can erase with pencil, when you're drawing, it's a different motion than writing. It's a different pressure than writing. When you write, you grasp whatever it is, the writing implement with your thumb and forefinger, and you press down with your finger point tips. When we're drawing, we kind of use our arm. It's a looser motion. And I'm going to use this because you don't want to have like choppy little lines. You want smooth lines, especially when you're using a marker. So I see this shape as a sun. That's what I see in my head, the one that he created. I have a printout of what he did too. I see that shape as a sun. So in my head, you're just going to do circles here. Okay. It doesn't matter that it's not perfect or it doesn't match up because you're going to be adding color on top of this. And then I'm just going to do another one. And then he starts doing these things that I see as dancers with the legs reaching out, or there's a kind of swinging motion. So that's how I'm interpreting it. I'll do maybe one more here. And then he does, again, this is like rhythm. It's a satisfying sound too, hearing that marker on the paper like that. And then this sort of thing, which seems to be something he uses a lot. And to me, it feels like it's a dancer. So I'll just put that in. That's another Cyrilism, if you want to call it that. And then, you know, however you want to call these things, rainbow-like. What you do here is up to you. Whatever it's your fancy. Again, I'm sort of inspired by what he did to guide my shapes. If there's something personal you want to add to it, I don't see why would stop you. Again, the drum, that's kind of, it was important to me to include that somehow. It's like an eye shape also at the top. And I feel like he has that eye motif in his work a lot too. So that's another reason that was important for me to include. And then lots of these kind of, again, rhythmic shapes and patterns. And then he does, again, like I call them like the drum beats, those circular things. You can draw these in now, or you can add them with your color. And some of them should go off. If you have them all fit in, forced in, it looks contrived. He has them here too. So just circles, some of them off, some of them fully circular, some of them cut off by the borders. As many or as few as you like. He does things with zigzag too. So I might do that over here. And you can also do this part with oil pastel. And I noticed this stripe motif is used in a lot of his work. And I don't know if you ever read Oh, the Places We Will Go by Dr. Seuss. Something about this reminds me of that. Okay, and then you know, maybe one other shape over there. You could do shapes in here with your marker as well. I'm doing some shapes with just my oil pastel, and then I use color pencil on top of that, just because, you know, I like to have the mixture of lines. It's your preference. If you want to put in the shapes with the marker, go ahead, because then that gives you something to color and to define. If you like to do things kind of in an organic sort of, just add the color as you go. I've said this before when we've done oil pastel. Oil pastel is forgiving. You can like correct stuff when you're putting stuff down with oil pastel, as long as you go light to dark. It's harder to correct when you go dark to light. With any material, paint, oil pastel, color pencil, you need to go light to dark. That's the general rule to add and build color. So I'm kind of happy with this. Well, maybe I'll add some zigzags up here. And again, I can add stuff later as I add color and I feel like I need to fill in more pattern. Go ahead and do that. All right. So once you have your drawing in a place that you like, then you're going to start adding color. So if you have oil pastels, go ahead and use oil pastels. If you do have color pencils, you're going to use a color pencil. It's harder to get that nice saturation. His work has, the color is important. The vibrance and saturation of the color is important. Nothing is pale and wishy-washy. Everything's very boldly colored. So oil pastel is great for that, because, you know, you can use, you don't have to press hard, you know, a little bit covers a lot of it. I just did want to show you, let me get up close a little bit. I did use a combination of, to get the bottom part of this purple figure here. Just
So Teresa, we have a quick little interjection. Can we just give people a bit more time to set up their page?
Oh, yes, please.
You know, like
yes.
the drawings, like the base drawings, like with the pencil.
Yes.
Like we have the drum on the left, and then we have like this wonderful kind of dividing the page that you have, and then we have something on the left, and then we have something at the
That's great. I'm glad
drum.
people are doing this along with me, because I feel like a lot of times people are just watching.
Oh, no.
We definitely should be interactive, and people should
like
be
drawing along, and you're like an amazing artist. So like, I feel like we have to keep up with you sometimes. So like, love. Yes, we love having you teach us, but we just need the pace just a little.
Okay, slow it down. That's fine.
Because like people can start and then they can finish by themselves if they have to. I prefer like knowing the history of Mr.
Cyrils. Yeah, it's a hard, it doesn't roll off the tongue, Cyrils.
Yes,
because of the R's. If it was just seals, but there's that R, Cyrils. Yeah, it's hard to say it. I was saying it over and over and like stumbling on my own tongue today.
So it's like a tongue twister. Yes, but I appreciate your correcting my pronunciation, because I do want to be true to the artist, and I do want to be respectful, and you know, it's said with love. So that's good. And I'm having a fantabulous, I'm drawing with you today, actually.
Oh, good. So we can go by your pace also. You can tell me when to continue.
Well, I don't think I'm like one of our expert drawers here, but
do you see, I mean, yes, I draw a lot. So, but you don't have to put as much detail as I put.
No, but I love the way that you like set it up, and like you showed us that you can have these outlines in the pencil, and then you can go over it with this Sharpie or dark pen or whatever you want to outline it with, right?
Yes. And then you'd have to erase the pencil lines. Although if it's light enough, and I always tell my students this, easier to add than take away. Light touch means you don't have to do much erasing, if any, because you'll be able to cover it with the oil pastel. If you press hard, it's harder to erase. You actually have the indent of the pencil, and it's harder to erase. So always good to go light. If you're brave, just go for it with marker. It's very liberating. Because for me, I'm always like planning stuff out and sketching it. That's why I sort of really, it's like, this is just, you know, there's no pressure to make it look like a person or to, you know, get the shade a certain way. It's just a Zen kind of drawing.
Now we have a question for the lines for the drum, to give it like some, you know, on the neck of the drum, like the body of the drum. Do you have any tips about, like, for perspective, like where to put the curve in it? Like,
well, I follow this. You mean this curve?
Yes. So no, the curves that are like on going like, that one.
Yeah, just follow the eye, the shape of that eye curve.
Okay, so follow the shape of the eye, so that
it all just goes out, maybe like an inch apart. again, this is not like mathematical. This is just really kind of organic. And it's just, if you want to make your lines closer, you'll have a much more interesting textured, you know, pattern. It's a pattern. It's a repeating line. My pattern is fairly far apart. A pattern is anything that repeats. So he's, you know, and that's, again, that's based on not just rhythm and for music, but also the clothing that he saw. And today, I did not know this, but Victoria is from Ghana. So she had on a shirt, and I took a picture of it with her. She created a piece too, that her cousin made for her. And she had the piece, and she's wearing, you know, holding her painting. And it was just really beautiful because it was so evident that that's where, you know, the culture, the pattern, that color, you know.
Okay. So we have a question in the chat. Can you please define organic drawing?
Organic drawing is just free flowing from your arm. It's not trying, it's like you're not doing anything really geometric or trying to observationally draw something to capture it truly. It's just drawing, you know, kind of, again, that Zen, you know, when you're like in a meditative state without overthinking something. It's just that, just drawing. And there's no like hard corners, except for maybe here. You know, it's just taking your drawing implement, not planning too much, and just like a child draws, you know, just draw without thinking. That's not to say that this is childish by any means at all. It's just that feeling of, you know, I'm going to draw this circle here and then circles around it because it looks good here. You know,
So like
I also don't want to call it
freestyle, right? Like
freestyle. Yeah.
Freestyle, like that's
Freestyle.
Another synonym maybe, or a
Yeah,
way
it's
of
not,
looking
you're
at
not
it?
following a formula so
Okay.
much, you know,
Okay.
you're drawing circular shapes. The shapes themselves are sort of natural and free flowing. I
Thank
don't know
you,
if that
Teresa.
makes sense, but
Yeah, no, these opportunities to be together are really wonderful because it helps us expand our vocabulary and our understanding. And then when we're looking at art, either like on the computer or at a museum, we
Yeah.
can look for these concepts in the work that we're looking at as well, not only when we're creating,
yeah,
but when we're experiencing art. And it really helps us become nuanced viewers and appreciators of art. So we really do appreciate you taking the time to explain to us.
okay. And I'm happy to. Hopefully I'm articulating it properly. Again, this is a style that's different for me because it doesn't fall into my normal. I mean, as you know, what I've done with, although last time we did that was also really fun, neurographic art, which is, I guess, this kind of is reminiscent of, in a way. You know, it's art that it's, you know, that's organic too. It's just your brain telling you, just draw, you know, just connect this shape. Don't overthink it. That's basically what it is. But I'm waiting on your cue to let me know when people are ready to start adding color.
Okay, so everybody, how are we doing with our outlines? Have we started adding color on our own, or are we adding color now? Can we add color? How do people feel?
Okay, and I also want to reiterate that this can be continued on your own, because after you have the shapes all drawn in, because we only have an hour's time, I do want to show you how to add color, that you can continue with your shapes and you continue adding even after you add color, because the coloring is also truly like, it's a Zen kind of feeling where you just meditate, because it's not shading, you're filling in colors and you're adding shapes. And it's just, you know, it's going to take more than an hour to complete it. Or unless you're very fast, it might not take more than an hour.
Okay, that's great. So maybe giving us a little bit of background about how to add color, and then maybe starting to add, and then people can...
Okay, so because if you're using, whether you're using oil pastel, color pencil, if you did this straight with color pencil, again, it will take you too long. It's not too long, it'll take you longer. And let me just show how often people use color pencil, and that is not how I recommend that you use it. I'll find a small spot. So here's my colored pencil, and I'll fill this in over here. So you're not going to add color like this, where you just let the pencil skim onto the surface of the paper. I mean, that's not saturated, and you can probably barely see it from where I drew it. So when you add color pencil, you are really going to push down on that surface of that paper and push your pencil in there And that's how you get good bright saturation. Okay. So that's the colored pencil. This takes longer. I like to use things that don't put pressure on my hand. My students, who are all teens, their hands seem to be stronger than mine. They have more perseverance and they can do that. I love to use oil pastel. So when you use oil pastel, it's not as precise as colored pencil, but it's much easier to cover large areas. So my little trick, which is, I don't know if you could see the difference between this and up here, I do both. I use oil pastel and then colored pencil to get that precision. And that's also more mimicking Cyrils' very neat, precise, clean painting. So how do we do the color? Well, oh, one other thing I wanted to mention with his work, and I tried to keep with my piece that was inspired by him. He uses, I call it negative space, any space that is the background for what the main part of your work is. He paints in this piece and other pieces, he uses black. Some of them he uses other colors, but he does separate, I feel like, what the main objects are with, separate them from each other with this black space. And you can continue to do that with this. I have certain areas where I'm going to have as black, or you can do that whatever you want in there and keep it bright in different colors. I feel like the black also helps the colors pop more and gives the eye a place to rest from all the colors. So there's often, reason why things are done that way. Dark spaces that don't have any color make the color pop out more. So like this space here, this place here, this here. And the other thing that you do is you balance it all out in some way. So don't have all the black in one area, don't have all the purple in one area. That's balance. Balance is one of the principles of art and design, where you have like art, the color, parts of the color, throughout. So there's yellow here, and there's yellow here, and there's yellow here, so that the eye travels around the painting. So something like this, where it's based on pattern, color, rhythm, where you're not drawing something observationally, you're where you put your colors is dictated by trying to get balance and trying to get that pattern and an even spread of like yellows and greens. That's the only thing that I've used to determine where I'm going to put colors. One of the questions today, we were using paint, and was, should I do all the yellow first and then do all the green first and then do all the blue first? That's also up to you, especially when it comes to oil pastel though. With paint, it may be more important because you want to keep your brush clean. So if you're going to start with light to dark, it's good to get all the light out of the way and then keep going darker and darker so the brush doesn't get, dirtied, or the color before doesn't dirty it. That's not as much of an issue with oil pastel because you're doing it separate. It's each a separate stick. There's no, pot of color that you're getting it from. So how do you add the color? So, you literally take the oil pastel, and you guys are going to be working on a horizontal surface. Go all the way up to the edge. How many people have oil pastel? And everybody, well, do we know what's everyone working with? If everyone just puts it, I'll open the chat.
So we have a few of us that got kits from the library that we gave out oil pastels, and then whatever anybody else has at home. And some people told me they have color pencils, and other people told me they have pastels and crayons. So
okay, crayons is also
with pens. Let me know. Acrylic paints and canvas we have from someone.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I just said about the paint, because you're going to be washing your brush, then you kind of want to start with the light colors and move around your canvas and get lots of yellows done, unless you want to really clean your brush really well each time, or you have multiple brushes. But you're building this as you go. So I've just put green over here, so I'm going to put green over here and balance that out. So people are using oil pastels, because that's what I'm demoing this with. I just showed you a little bit with color pencil, but you have to keep in mind color pencil doesn't give you the saturation that we're looking for with this piece. So you'll have to work harder to cover more area, and it definitely will take you more than an hour. This, you can get this, what I've done here, in about an hour. All right, let me close this chat. And so the color, so here there's no light pressing with oil pastel. Oil pastel, you've got to take that It's pigment mixed with like an oil, linseed oil type thing, and pushed into molds. And it's almost like oil paint in a stick, as is stick form. So color it. Go ahead and, go for it. If you have big spaces, it's easy to go right to the edge. But again, I'm going to show you the trick that I use, and I have my students use with oil pastel and colored pencil. So if you have both, you could do this. And also with oil pastel, you really want to go in there and get that white part. Hopefully everyone can see that. You don't really want to show any white paper underneath, especially since we're mimicking a painting. And his paintings are very well defined with color, saturated with color, no texture from the canvas is visible. And this is the part that's just zen. It's just, all you're doing is you're coloring inside the lines. We're doing my freshman. We're working on Keith Haring inspired posters. And with all the stuff we've been doing so far, it's observational. So fruit, they've been doing with oil pastel. And I'm constantly reminding them, look up at the fruit as you draw it, because you're not just coloring it in like it's colored like a coloring book, and you're coloring inside the lines. You have to record what you see. Here, we're just coloring inside the lines. So it's just really fun. Just be as neat as you can. Be as messy as you want to be. If you want to be a little bit more messy, again, we're trying to, the reason why we drew these lines, though, is to stay within the lines. Okay, so I've gotten that green done. And then I like doing this because I feel it's a satisfying, it's actually, what is it when it's sensory? It's a sensory, for me, it's a satisfying sensory kind of thing. I don't think I have the right green out though, so let me pull out my proper green. The feeling of what you're doing is you're using the pencil to push your oil pastel up into those edges, and it actually helps blend it. And my favorite colored pencils, in case there's anybody who's like looking into like which ones to buy, Prismacolor. They're definitely the best ones. They're not the cheapest ones, but they're the best ones in terms of trying to get good color, as opposed to Crayola, which are harder and waxier. These are softer, more pliant. So if you are interested and have the time, this just moves the oil pastel around and it covers the surface even more evenly and gives you that nice saturation that you want. But this is, it's not totally not necessary. If all you have is oil pastel, you can totally do this with just oil pastel. If you have both, try it out. Again, it's that feeling of, pushing a greasy, soft material around the paper with something that's harder and less flexible, but you get a nice, there's a nice effect that comes from it. So I started doing that here. You're not doing this vertically, you're doing it horizontally, but you'll still have pieces of oil pastel that come off on your pencil. Just clean them off. And then you could brush it off, knock it on the surface to get the extra pieces off. And this is just if you want to get that nice, really even coverage. It's harder to get into the onto the edges of your shape with just oil pastel, but it's much easier to refine it and finish it off, polish it off with a colored pencil. And that's what I'm doing here. When you get to smaller shapes, you'll find that you might just want to switch to your colored pencil entirely. All right, so I also want to keep this green consistent with the green that I did over there. So I'm going to go back over it with my oil pastel. If you're using oil pastel, you have to peel it to keep working with it. It would be nice if, it did it automatically, but you've got to peel the paper and take it off entirely, but then your fingers get, colored. So I'm going to cover this with the green. The only thing I'm really not using here in the color spectrum, the red, orange, yellow, the rainbow spectrum is red. For whatever reason, I've kept the palette. I think I again was inspired by his color palette here, which blues, oranges, purples, greens, a lot of dark brown, black. Your color choices are whatever are your favorite colors. All right. So this area, I did entirely with oil pastel. I didn't rely on my line. So if you want to do that, because, you know, maybe you don't want to have to outline the black because it's too, you feel like you'll be messy or whatever it is. And because I mentioned oil pastel is forgiving, so I'm going to do some circles in there. Orange, and I'll do my circles in blue. It's a dark blue. So how will I do this? You can do the whole thing in orange and then put the blue on top, but I'm going to just plan it out because I want that blue to be really pure. So I'm just going to draw my circle shapes with the orange. Where do you want them? Some of them should be whole. It's always good to have some whole ones, and then have some cut off because it's a pattern that this shape has made on top. So have some cut off by it so it doesn't look contrived. I always say that. Don't, you know, it looks like it's nice and randomly spread out. Okay, I like that. Now you color around what you've drawn with your oil pastel. So it gives you a different effect than something like that, for instance. And if you wanted to color inside the circles with a pencil or marker, it's careful when you're using marker with oil pastel. Marker tends to be water-based and it doesn't react well with the oil pastel. It gets like clogged. The tips get clogged, they stop working. Even permanent marker on top of oil pastel, it stops working. It doesn't like it. So those are two materials that you don't necessarily want to mix. You could do marker first and then put the oil pastel on top. So I always feel also, again, and it's preference too. Some people love working with marker, but once you put that marker color down, you can't really do much else on top of it. That marker doesn't like to be really mixed. That's the color. Oil pastel likes to be mixed, so you can actually put another color right on top of this and blend it all together and get your own unique color. So two ways of adding your pattern. So if you didn't want to spend that much time with the black line, because that you can't, permanent marker is not forgiving. Oil pastel is forgiving. So I can do stuff right on top of that. And you don't have to do it this way. You can do it the way I did here, here, or combine them. And I'm going to show you what I mean by adding another color on top. I wouldn't put, for instance, blue or green. We'll turn that brown. Not that there's anything wrong with brown, but I want this to be a nice bright color because that's what Cyrils' art is about, the brightness of color. For the most part, there's exceptions to that, of course. So I'm going to use yellow. Whenever you use a light color on top of a darker color, the darker color, just all it does is it softens it. Here's a nice light yellow. Okay. No, it doesn't have to peel it. So you're not going to notice much difference, and you shouldn't. All I'm doing is really softening it out and blending it out. Making sure that white's covered. It makes it look more finished when you use two colors that are very, very similar with oil pastel. Okay. You'll be working much more slowly than I am currently working. Feel like I'm racing the clock, but I do want to get these different techniques. Just want to show them to you. And also, you don't have to work as quickly as I'm working. You can work at a slower pace and get it done as you. Okay, so then because I'm using a dark color on top of a lighter color. Now you can, oh, you have to peel it. Oh, I have to peel it. Or you can do that with color pencil. Right on top of there. And it'll cover the white underneath and the orange because it's a darker color. So now you can be really neat and get your edges really crisp. And this blue ties into this blue. So again, I'm probably gonna put blue somewhere over there. So it makes your eye travel all around. Oh, there's a bit of blue over there. There's a bit of blue there. There's orange there. And I'm pushing pretty aggressively onto this so that I cover that orange and get a nice clean edge. A little more. You can have bigger dots so it doesn't take as long to do add the big dots. I mean to add the blue dots here. And if you're doing this with acrylic, you're going to find that's the other thing. You don't have to put several coats of oil pastel. I didn't really put coats of oil pastel here so much as I blended. With acrylic, if you're using acrylic paint, you'll have to add coats of paint. 2 coats, like this is 2 or 3 coats of paint to get the coverage. And if you've worked with acrylic before, you'll know that you need to do that, especially if you're going with a dark color on top of light. The yellow, you can get away with a 1 coat, but with acrylic, you're going to have to get at least 2 coats of paint on there to get a good saturation. Time. Okay, we have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. All right, so then you can do the same thing and get a blue here. And if you really, really want to get it nice and crisp, you're going to do the same thing with your blue color pencil that I did with the green over there, with the yellow over here, and go back and really crisp up, make your edges really crisp. This is not necessary. If you're a little OCD like I am, you could do this. It also adds another nice little kind of effect on there that if you just use plain color pencil, I'm sorry, if you use just plain oil pastel, you wouldn't have that additional kind of effect. I mean, I don't know if you could tell the difference, but this is clean and crisp, and this is a little bit kind of rougher, which is not to say that's bad, but it's different from this technique, which is nice and crisp. Any questions now since I showed you this technique? Everybody following along and finding that they're having issues or it's not working out the way I'm just showing you? Okay, I want to show you what happens when I'm going to fill in this area here just to show you what the black will do to those. Actually, I'll work down here. And if anybody has a question, just blurt it out so that, or somebody just, because it's hard for me to see the chat while I'm working. I'm actually going to use this gold. I want to have this gold spread out more. So that's how I'm determining my colors. I don't really do it by color. The argument to do it when you're painting is what I said with the clean the brush. But even with that, you can work a section at a time, or you can work on the broad surface and then come back and adjust. And I'm working quickly only because I do want to show you something that's semi-finished. You don't have to keep up in terms of my pace, because really all I'm doing is just coloring it in. Now I put that gold down and I'm putting a lighter yellow on top, which is all that's doing is pushing it into the surface of the paper and blending it. I have blue here, so I want to bring some green in. So I'm going to do green. I think a light blue, that's a little different. You're going to do a light green. This is where I've done some shapes with the marker first. If you like to color in, they have those now adult coloring book pages. This is your thing right here. Actually, yeah. And some purple to tie that into there. I'm also going to put purple in there. I need to balance out with purple. If you're doing this with crayon, you'll find you'll have to press harder too. Again, oil pastel is just softer, so it covers more in a more saturated way. But some people are able to achieve really good results with crayon. Depends on how strong your hands are. And this drum will be a good opportunity to show you how you can add a pattern or some sort of design on top of oil pastel, which is different from what I did here. I drew the pattern first and then filled it in. Here I'm going to color and then add a pattern. So it's easier to add a pattern when you have dark on top of light. So I did use a dark blue, and then I use this yellow here. So I'm going to add my pattern on top of so yeah, and when we're all done here, I'm going to I'm going to work on this also on my own, get rid of the go back over it with colored pencil so I get that nice soft blended crisp, similar to that, just because that's what I like. But again, for the purposes of the demo, I'm going to show you how to do it on top of somewhat unfinished surface. Same process. So I have a zigzag here, so I'm going to do a zigzag on here. Whatever you can do is a wavy line. You can do X's. And it goes where you push down pretty hard. If you're using oil pastel, if you're using paint, you would also do the same thing where you use not push down hard, but dark on top of a lighter color. You can do light on top of it, but you'd have to do a couple of coats. So that's my pattern on that, which I will repeat. And again, there's no formula for this. I'm kind of just doing this as a Zen kind of thing, not doodling, but just whatever my whatever floats my boat, whatever seems to work and what I enjoy with my hand creating. Using Cyrils art as my guide. I also want to show you, so I kind of went over this into my yellow area, the whole to demonstrate that oil pastel is forgiving. Let me use a lighter yellow. You can kind of just erase it right off, clean it up right into the, clean up right into the edge. And it's gone. Another thing I want to do with the top of this drum, which reminds me of an eye, which he does a lot. Before I do that, I'm going to do the purple. Actually, I'm going to use green. And we'll do zigzag, not zigzag, waves. Same way, where I'm pushing down really hard. And I'm just drawing right on top of that. There you go. I'm going to do the same thing in the other two yellow areas. Just mixing it with the light yellow first, so it's all perfectly blended, coated. I'm doing this zigzag right on top. I'm not zigzag, I'm sorry, the wavy line. And this one too, last but not least. You could put polka dots in here if you wanted. There's no like rules, you know. You could.
Question about what do you use to seal the oil pastel to prevent smudging on the final image? Hairspray works sometimes.
Right, if you're home and you don't have art supplies, you can use an aerosol arts hairspray, but let it cure. Oil pastel doesn't dry, it cures. Oil paint doesn't dry either. It's based on it cures. So give it like, I don't know, a couple of days really. But I don't seal my oil pastel drawings with anything. They do smudge, but then that's only if you touch them. If you mean while you're working on them, you can't really seal it as you're working on them. You just have to try not to touch them. Does that kind of explain? Do you want to seal it as you're working on them? Who asked that question?
Ardina asked, and it was in the chat, so I'm just monitoring the chat. Is there a professional sealant that we can buy at the art
Yeah,
store?
there's a matte fixative, and there's lots of different brands. You can also use, if you really wanted to, seal it for good. But again, because it's you can use polyurethane spray on top of it. That makes an impervious barrier to anything, but let it air cure a little bit. Again, you can do oil pastel like this, like in 2 years, the oil pastel will still scrape off. It's not meant to be like paint and permanent. You kind of just do it and you really don't mess around with it much after. But if you do want to kind of like move it around or whatever, not want to smudge it, hairspray, this matte fixative, polyurethane spray, you can even paint it with polyurethane, just brush it on top. But I was showing you this drum and the how to do oil pastel on top when the light went out. Did you see that?
Can you re-explain it?
Yeah, so I'm doing that over here because he uses this motif a lot in his you could see in his eyes. He does, I don't know, I think it's just like it's a Nigerian fabric type thing. So I'll do it on there with the green. Let's place my. Okay. So on here, I'm just going to do a border like this, and all I'm doing is mimicking the shape that I created. And it's darker on top of white, which is why it's working. And then I'm just going to do these lines. I don't know if they're like kind of eyelashes. Kind of looks Egyptian. And how much or how little you do is up to you. It's kind of like personal taste. I feel like that's enough. When you're cleaning up oil pastel, to just brush it slightly, that can smudge. But it's all like a experience with your touch. You can use a soft brush too, like one of those cheap brushes. I did want to show you how what the black does for this when you do the areas of black. That's supposed to be, that's the black. Use colored pencil in here. Is it small? It's a small area. Well, a colored pencil is faster in the small areas than it is in larger areas because it's less to cover. So these three colorful areas, there's black, which is what he does. And I feel like it makes them pop more. And it gives the eye a place to rest from all the pattern and texture. And when I'm using, you know, masterful artwork as my inspiration, I do try to honor that artwork by, you know, using what that artist has learned and obviously showing in his or her work. And the black areas, I do feel like add something to this. It could be darker purple or blue if you don't want to use black. Or a combination. I use oil pastel in dark areas as a combination blue, black, purple all the time. It adds a little bit of dimension to that little area. Let's see how it's now different. The white is quite drastic. The black is kind of like a nice place to rest the eyes. Quiet the eyes a little bit. And to show you that when you mix colors, so, blue. I'm not sure it's going to really come through on the video. But it just softens it a little bit, so it's not quite as dark a space. Dark gray could also work really well as an area for the eye to rest. I like the black. If you're using paint, you'll have to put 2 coats of black to get that nice solid. I don't want to say saturated. It's not, well, I guess it is. It's saturation usually has to do with color. Black is the absence of all color. I know it's it's counterintuitive. You think, oh no, you get mix every color, you get black. You mix every color, you actually get brown. But in the rainbow, when you put white light through a prism, you get every color. So white is the presence of every color, and that's just the science of it. Paint wise, it's a little different, but what causes black is the absence of light. So if an object is in a box, there's no light at all, that object has no color, it's black. So that's why we say that black is the absence of all color. And white, when it's, you know, the prism and it's light and science, it's the presence of all color. A little weird, but that's how it is. So I'm going to continue coloring. And again, if anybody has any questions, I mean, I don't get a little sound notification if there's a question in chat. So I encourage you to just ask. And I always make my students ask questions out loud because other people might have the same question and you benefit from the answer. More than one person can benefit from the answer.
All right, so we had a couple people join us like midway in progress. So to recap, what we did was we took our base paper and then we did our outline and we put some shapes and we did this freehand, right, Teresa?
Yes, this was all freehand, no template. We used my painted version of Cyrils. That last name is so hard for me. Cyrils' work.
Yes.
It's inspired me to do that. And now we're just adding color, really meditative way, at least I find it. So with oil pastel, and whether you're using color pencil, marker, paint, you're filling in the colors in a nice saturated, bright way, not soft, you know, and pale, but really bright. You're really committing to that color. His work, these paintings that he did, that he's known for, were inspired by the art that he saw in Nigeria and Ghana and Morocco. It was all bright, vibrant, full of pattern and rhythm. So here I did the pattern on top of the oil pastel. You know, it was blank. Here I have a pattern already and I'm filling around it. So this is just coloring. In some ways, this is easier because it's already been done. But again, you have to be pretty sure of yourself with the marker when you do it this way, when you're doing your outline marker. This could be interesting if it were done in collage as well, cut out shapes that were glued down, which I actually am interested in trying myself just to see what I can come up with, cutting out shapes and then gluing them down like with tissue paper, construction paper, paper that I've painted and cut out myself. I mean, there's lots of things that this lends itself to.
Teresa, that's so wonderful. Like theme and variation, you can vary up the mediums and
Yes.
then, yeah.
That's all process, you know, which I'm doing with my advanced placement students, you know, experimentation and process. And what can you do? And this, because of the clean cutout shapes, you almost want to cut out and lay things down and then glue it down. And the benefit of doing it with cutout shapes is you can move stuff around and you don't have to commit to anything until you like where you've put it.
So we have a question about seeing the artist's work in galleries today.
Oh, that is a good question. I know that there's a gallery in, you can look it up. I just was looking that up. Let me see. He has some work in a permanent collection, but I mean, honestly, just look up Charles Cyrils. He has his wife, his widow has not a foundation, but a permanent collection. She has a website put up for him.
I didn't get that.
Oops,
Could you try again?
Sorry, I wasn't talking to you, Siri. Woodmere Art Museum in Philadelphia, because he was born there. There's a work of his in the Smithsonian American Art Museum in Washington, D.C. And then you can see a lot of his work online as well. I saw a couple pieces of his at the Smithsonian when I went with my family and when my kids were younger. But again, yeah, just see, but you can see how this is shaping up, right? It's kind of working. If anybody wants to share what they've done, you know, Z knows I love it when people share their work. I would love to see. losing my orange. There it is. But as you can see, the colors are getting more and more cohesive as I fill the whole thing in. I'm going to put orange here too, so balance out the orange I put over here, because I want this to be sort of my sun. I'm kind of focusing on one.
This is what I have so far. I don't know if you can see.
I heard some, what was that?
This is what I have so far.
Oh, wow, that looks great. Let me just get that on screen. Sorry, give me
I co-spotlighted so you can see both of you together.
I love the pink, but see that
Thank you.
this here, that is such a Cyrils motif. And again, it's to me, it's like a dancer. It seems to me like a dancer. And when I was reading about his inspiration, it's like, that's why it looks like a dancer, because he was influenced by dancing. Anybody else want to share?
We got some comments in the chat. Thank you for the intro to the artist's work and for the great class. 2 people lost power and they texted me that they can't get back on.
Oh my gosh. See, when you said that at the beginning of the class, I was like, what?
Yeah, no,
but then of course it happens.
Yes, the snow and the wind squalls are like insane, and they're ripping through the whole state. So they were upstate more earlier around 12:01, and then now they're like coming down towards Westchester, and they're in Westchester. So I just want everybody to stay safe.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm inside.
Yes, we do have a question where you teach your classes for teens.
Oh, at my high school where I work, I'm a full-time art teacher at Maria Regina High School. So I have all teens from 9th grade to 12th grade. But I also do, I just got to see emergency alert. Wow. Anybody else got that? Everybody be inside.
Yeah. So you teach outside of high school, like you teach for young
at the library. I have something coming. Oh, next month at the library, but we're doing this with you guys as well, is the Women's History Month. But the sessions at the library, 90 minutes, and we usually work together, and we get the, it's harder. The extra 30 minutes really helps to get a piece done. And also because I'm working quickly to get the piece done to show it finished.
Right.
So but with this, something like this, once you get the outlines all done, then you can like just go to town and take your time and color when it's squalling outside. Yes,
exactly. You be warm inside, and it's a good thing. And it's very important to have time and spend time on art and not to be rushed. We offer these classes and they have time limits on them. Unfortunately, I wish we could do an afternoon of art. It would be really great, but that doesn't mean that you have to end and stop.
No, exactly. This is a great activity to do on a day like this,
And Teresa's really wonderful about giving feedback. So if you wanted to email your art,
I would love to see it. I mean,
art and questions. Teresa's been very responsive, and she can send you like help through the internet. She can answer the email saying, let's say your drum looks a little flat and you're wondering like how to make it pop more, or make it more 3D. It could be the angle at which you drew your circle, or all these
curve, how rounded off you made your curve. But you know the difference in the material. See, see how the acrylic. There's a softness with oil pastel. There's a crispness with acrylic. So you can experiment with doing the same subject in different media. And
yes, and someone private chatted me to ask you about paper, Teresa. There's so many different kinds of paper out there, and they feel that the paper gives texture. Like using a watercolor paper with pastels, you get this kind of white spots.
You shouldn't use watercolor. The reason why watercolor paper, I'm just trying to grab my pad without moving. One of the kind that we have our students use, it's an all-purpose drawing. Where did I put it?
Yeah, I used watercolor paper, and that was a no-no.
Yeah, watercolor paper is watercolor paper for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And I learned
it's meant
really
to
hard.
be with watercolor. It's very difficult to use oil pastel or colored pencil or anything. You can use acrylic paint on watercolor. Anything with brush and water is fine. But this is the drawing paper I use.
Yeah, see, so I'm showing you there's some white spots in mine because I used the wrong paper.
Oh, yes. Exactly.
And I only had 5, like the library gave out 5 pastels, so I had a limited palette.
Oh, but you know what? That looks neat though. Can I share that?
Yeah,
a good thing. I just want to take a screenshot of that.
yeah,
Because
here.
you're getting a different texture and the minimalist colors actually look kind of neat. You get a whole different vibe and mood from
Yeah.
that. Can you make yourself a co-share or whatever you want to call it? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I did. If you take it off gallery view, you'll see.
Okay, hold on.
Like it should be talking right here. Hold on.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
okay. Okay.
Hold on. I'll spotlight here.
Speaker, okay. Talk.
Okay, here.
There you go. Oh, so yes, exactly. But you actually got a better effect than you would get with colored pencil because you found probably that you had to press hard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what
And
happened
it
with
was
that.
like really weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is drawing paper, and that's why I got a good even coverage on that. But you can use acrylic paint on that watercolor paper, and you get similar to this. Watercolor paper is meant for water, anything water-based, you know. Any other questions? There's a squalls outside before
Yes,
you
we had
lose
a
me.
question. I just got it on text because they couldn't do their chat. It was kind of weird. For you said about the Prismacolor versus a Crayola, like each has its worth, right? Because Crayolas is good if you know your kids and you're in school, and then if you're more serious about your art and you want to make more of an investment, then the Prismacolor is more malleable and flexible. So that was a great tip for us. What about for oil pastels? Because there's so much variety out there.
Yeah, you know, honestly, these that I just used, they're called the Crayons are fine. They're inexpensive. I have bought more expensive oil pastel. This one is low Cornell, and to be quite honest, the Crayons are fine. I keep saying Sakura because those are also fine. What else is a good one here? I'll show you the one that we use in our classroom. They're fine and they're not expensive. The thing with oil pastels is they disappear. You know, you just use them, not disappear, but you have to constantly buy them because they're a material that, you know.
We did have another question about like pencils and erasers. Like, you know, you talked about erasing. So like, I don't recommend using these cheap erasers. Oh yeah. So that's PEN.
TEL. And this is a bigger kit. They come from any size 36 to 72. But that you have to replenish your oil pastels, especially your whites, the lighter colors that get used much more quickly. But either of those brands, the Crayons or Pentel are fine, and they're not expensive. And I keep stock of those. But yeah, pencils, use a pink pearl to erase. Don't get a cheap eraser. Use a good drawing pencil. Number 2 also was fine.
Number 2, okay. And
Yeah.
somebody asked, like, the art erasers are generally tend to be white, or they tend to be like a sugar.
Oh, yeah,
like,
you can get the Staedtler, Staedler. I want to say pink pearl are fine. The key for erasing is not to draw hard, to draw lightly, to sketch lightly. You know, you can add to it, but if you press hard, it's really hard to erase, no matter how good your eraser is.
all right, to be freehand, but be light, I guess.
Lightly. The motion comes from your arm, not from the tip of your fingers.
Got it. Understood. And somebody asked me the difference between, here, you mentioned white S, gradations of white.
Did I?
In what context, I'm wondering?
I don't remember doing
Maybe maybe, yeah, if you could give us a little bit more context about whites, gradations of white. Like when you were talking about color, about black was like not every color together.
Oh, no, the white, well, because black is the absence of all color. That would make white the presence of all color, but that's not true with pigment. It's in light with prisms, and you shine a white light through a prism. Remember in science when you were in school, I forgot what grade, you shine a white light through a prism and all the colors come out: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. I was just using that to show you that why black is the absence of all color. People will think, oh, that's all the colors and that's why it's black. No, it means there's no light hitting it and the shadow is completely colorless. So that's why black. So does that make sense? Because I wasn't really talking about shades of white. White is white. Does that answer that question?
I'm waiting to see if LS checks us back in the chat. So,
Right,
Oh, great.
I'm sorry, you had mentioned when you were speaking about the various colors, and you said whites, plural. So I didn't know what you meant by that. Are there gradations of white?
I mean, you can add, if I said whites, I meant white. You know, often when I'm drawing, my left brain is doing the talking and my right brain is drawing. So if I said whites, that was by mistake. I apologize. It was white.
So singular, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, white. is-
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm always adding S's to words and creating my own language half the time, like fantabulous, which is fantastic and fabulous together.
Yeah. Okay, in any case, I'm getting a little nervous about the power again, but it's also 3:17.
Right. So let's wrap it up and ask, does anybody have any questions or want to show their work for a little bit of advice if they need it, or just to share
Yeah.
just for fun? It's no pressure. If you want to, great. Otherwise, we're going to thank Teresa for her time and her expertise. And thank you all for being together, because it's really nice to create art and have an atmosphere of total acceptance, and you can just be who you are and be at whatever level you're at and have fun.
Yes, and I think this is a great project for having fun and no pressure, for sure. I'm looking forward to finishing this one, actually.
Hi, everyone. This is Z from Yonkers Public Library. Thanks so much to Sally Pinto and Alexis and Barbara from NORC. Thank you to our community partners, WJCS, the City of Yonkers Office for the Aging, Westchester County Legislator Ruth Walter, Friends of Crestwood Library, and Yonkers Public Library for making this phenomenal partnership. And we thank each and every one of you for being part of our wellness community. Be well, stay well.